Time to bust open those jelly rolls. Today we're strip piecing. Jelly rolls have 2.5-inch strips. And that's what I'm using today. If you don't have any, just cut some 2.5-inch strip fabric and you'll be ready to go along with me. To start, I'm going to take my strips right sides together, layer them. I've got that nice edge along there, and then I'm going to take it to my sewing machine. I've got my 1/4-inch foot on, and I'm ready to start sewing. I'm going to stop and adjust to make sure my strips are always perfectly aligned. I'm going to set my seam first, and then I'm going to press to the dark. And it's very important on strip sets to make sure you don't get any of that fabric caught over in that fold. So on the strip set, there's 2 important things to know. One is that we're going to be subcutting it into 2.5-inch strips that way. And the second thing to know is that we're not going to rely on either of these outer edges for our straight lines. We're going to be using our center seam to show us what is straight on this. For subcutting, I like to use 2 rulers. I'm going to take my first ruler and I'm going to place it over it, and I'm going to align my line against that seam. That way I know I'm getting the straightest possible line, because sometimes that outside edge can get a little wonky. I'm going to take my second ruler, butt it up against it, pull my first ruler away, and make my first cut. Now I've got a nice straight edge to work with as I go. I'm going to cut 2.5-inch sections. Always lining up against that center seam. And so you can see here, I'm starting to get a little bit extra over my line, even though this part's lined up straight. So I'm just going to go ahead and nudge it down, because it just means I need to straighten up again. So I'm going to cut this one. I'm going to take that unit and flip it so that my excess side is out. And whenever I get it all lined back up again, I can just trim it off to straighten it. So to make a 4-patch, I've got my 2 units, and I've got them turned opposite ways so that whenever I turn it over, because we pressed them all the same way earlier, I'm gonna be able to lock that seam just like you would a 4-patch if you were sewing it all squares. But we've cut ourselves out a little step by strip piecing it. All right, I've got it right sides together, all lined up perfectly. And there I've got my little 4-patch. Now sometimes people will do 9 patches, or they'll just be strip sets that have multiple strips in them. So I want to show you what that looks like. So I've got this strip set started, and I've got 2 strips put together. They're already pressed, they're ready to go. And I've got my next strip to go onto it. So we're going to put it right sides together. And I just want to tell you here at this stage, after you've sewn one side and you're ready to do the next side, it's really important to start at the opposite end from where you began sewing the last time. So over here, I started sewing at this end, which means this time I want to start sewing at this end. Now I'm sewing a bit of a longer strip set here, and I want to show you why I've not pinned it. I've got this bottom layer sandwiched in between my fingers, and I take this top layer, I put it over, and I set my thumb there. That way I can evenly feed the layers of fabric through the sewing machine, keep that tension right, so that as I'm sewing, those feed dogs aren't pulling them at different rates. Now, if you're uncomfortable with this, you can go ahead and pin. That's not gonna hurt anything. So I've got this strip set ready to press. And because it's a 9-patch, I need to be thinking about which way I'm pressing these seams. On the side I've already sewn, I've pressed it to the dark. So for this one, I want to do the same thing. So I'm going to set my seam, and then I'm going to press it to the dark. And then a quick once over the whole thing, and it's ready for cutting. I'm going to make sure that my sewing lines are what's lined up on my ruler as much as I can. Sometimes there will just be little parts that get wobbly, and that's okay. We'll fix them as we get to them. I'm going to take my second ruler, get it down here to butt up against it. Everything looks good. And I've got my straight cut. And now I can take, and because these are my outer corners, I'm going to need 2 of these for making a 9 patch, cut at 2.5 inches. And see, I've lined it up here again against those sewing lines. And then we're going to get one of these for the center. Got my straight line, the edge, all lined up. All right, and I'm ready to make a 9 patch. So I've got my units lined up, right sides together, my seams locked thanks to that pressing that we did, and I'm ready to sew them. This is just like this step where you assemble the rows for a 9 patch, except that we skipped sewing all the squares together through the strip piecing. So I've got my 9 patch, made my 4 patch, and this is just the start of what you can do with strip piecing. If you want to learn more, check out my diamond strip piecing video. And thanks for watching. A special thanks to our sponsor, Eversewn. I love this machine, and if you'd like to get one too, check out shopaqs.com. Members always get 20% off, and you can get additional savings by using the code down in the description.